Welcome to the Mom and May podcast. I'm May.
And I'm Mom. And today we're going to kind of talk about a heavier topic, kind of a sad topic that's been happening in the news recently. But first, I'll let you start in prayer.
Yep. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that we can come together and talk about stuff that's happening in the world and that we can relate it to your word. And I pray that anything that's trying to come against us, I pray that you let no weapon prosper. And thank you for this day, even if it's...
Amen.
Bro, amen. Oh my gosh.
Really,
Stop.
Kat? Oh my goodness, you're such a stinker. Okay, anyway, let's just keep rolling, because that's life. Okay, so for today's topic, we were kind of going back and forth. What should we talk about for our next podcast? Thinking of all these different ideas, and we will take suggestions if you have them. But there was one thing that was kind of weighing heavy on my heart with the news and social media and things I've been seeing that's going on in the world or that's been happening just recently, and that is the fires in California and the just the devastation that I've been seeing in videos and in pictures. And it's just hurts my heart when I see it and see that all these houses and neighborhoods and people's lives are completely destroyed. Everything they owned is just gone, with minimal time to grab anything and get out to safety. And as I was watching those, I was just thinking, man, like, this is so sad. This is so horrible. Like, everything they owned is just taken from them in an instant. And it really made me think how temporary our possessions here are on earth. And I thought that was something that we could talk about. I mean, everything we own can be taken at any moment. And I think that kind of helps remind us not to put too much worth into our possessions.
Yeah, because like everything in this world is based off of stuff that you have, like money, items, clothes, like how much or how good, high quality your stuff is. And it also is, money and stuff is such an idol in the world that unless you look at it as an idol, you don't realize that it's an idol in your life.
I think it's something that like this news and seeing these people's homes like gone, it reminded me, and I think it's something that I have to constantly work on in myself, is to be so grateful for what I have, but not to put too much worth in what I have and what I want. I mean, we're shoppers. We like to shop. We like to get new things to make our houses and rooms look better. Like, I can't wait to get new couches because I don't like the way my couches look. But it can be so easy to put too much focus into that and to forget how unimportant that stuff is, and how that we can't take that stuff with us when we go to heaven. Like, none of that
it could
matters.
Disappear in like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
If we were to get resurrected, it wouldn't have mattered, and then it would all be about, well, how many heavenly treasures have you stored up?
Yeah. Us as humans store up a lot of worldly treasures, don't we? That mean absolutely nothing.
Look around our house right now.
I know, it's crazy. And we could think of a million more things that we need.
Yeah.
But I think that's what the fires reminded me of, is like, you know what? I need to not put too much focus into my possessions and what my house looks like and the clothes I wear and all of these things. Like, those are things that can be taken so quickly from me. And even if they aren't taken from me, like in a fire or destruction, when I die, I absolutely am not taking this stuff. I'm not taking my house with me to heaven. I'm not taking my beautiful Our House dining room table that I love to heaven. Like, I'm not taking my favorite outfit. Like, none of that's coming. None of that will have meant anything. It all turns back into dust.
Yeah.
So that got me thinking, like, what do I need to focus? Like, what do I need to keep every day, remind myself to focus on? Like, what do we take to heaven?
Yeah.
I was saying, like, obviously, the most important thing is to be right with God. Like, that's our idol is God. Like, the only thing we should be worshiping is God and not the stuff and worldly things around us and success and money and all of that.
And no matter how many things that you buy that you want or you think you need, they're only going to make you satisfied for like maybe like a day, like maybe a month. But if I buy clothes, then I wear them for a week and I love them, and then I want more.
And then you're texting your mom, can I buy this because it's on sale?
Yeah.
I think I got that text this week.
Yeah. So it's never going to be enough, and it's never going to satisfy you like God can satisfy. It's all going to be temporary.
Yeah, we can only get our satisfaction through Jesus. The other thing I thought of, so yes, we need to just focus on being right with Jesus and getting our fulfillment and satisfaction from him. And that's a constant work. Like that's something I've known for a long time, and I still catch myself being like, ooh, striving for these gold shiny things and striving to earn more money, and none of that's necessarily bad, but that can't be our main focus.
Yeah. Because if we put our whole heart and our reliance on those things, we're going to be let down every single time, because they're never going to be what gives us what God gives us. Like, they can never be eternal.
Yeah. And I don't think it's bad to have goals and want things and to want to grow, and I run a business. I want it to grow. I want it to expand. I want it to thrive. I want it to make more money. But I constantly am praying every single day, God, help me. This business is yours. Like I remind myself and I tell God, this business is yours. Do with it what you want to do with it. Help me be a good steward of the resources you are giving me. And that's another thing we can pray is, help me be a steward of the resources you're giving me. This money that I'm earning is God's. It's not ours. It's temporary, and it's God's, not ours. So help me be a good steward of it. And then the other thing I was thinking of, not just with the fires, not just getting ourselves right with God, is what else do I get to take with me to heaven? Other people's souls.
Yeah.
Like, that has to be a huge focus.
Exactly. Because, it also helps to think about when you're scared when you're trying to preach or talk to people about Jesus and about the gospel, and you're scared, like, oh, they're gonna think I'm so weird. They're gonna get mad, and they're gonna think I'm some weirdo. But
she is weird.
Yeah.
She just owns it.
Set apart. If you think about it, them thinking you're weird for maybe even their entire life, maybe they think back and they're just like, oh, that girl was so weird, or that person was so weird when they tried to get me to do this. But that's a seed planted, and that's more hope for their eternity. It's either what they think about you then or their life for eternity.
Yeah. So, realizing how temporary this life is and our things are, that should be our focus, getting more people to know Jesus. And I get it's disheartening sometimes when you are trying to share your faith and there's people out there that are maybe seeing what you post or you're talking to, and you can tell that they're just not believing. But I wish I would have looked it up. I read a great verse that I had never read before this year, and it basically said that when the time comes, when Jesus comes back, that those people, that seed you planted, might be the thing that helps their eyes open and believe at that moment, at the last moment. And I wish I knew what verse that was, because I read that and I'm like, oh, it just took a weight off my shoulders for the people that I've been praying for and trying to minister to that haven't turned to Jesus. It took a little bit of that weight and pressure off my shoulders to be like, it's not futile. It's not hopeless. There's still hope because I did plant that seed.
And in 1 Corinthians, one of the chapters in 1 Corinthians, it says how Paul is the planter. It talks about Paul being a planter, Apollos being a waterer, but they can't do anything about the growth. It's God who makes it grow. And that's just we have different jobs on this earth. You may be a planter and I might be a waterer. of the plant, but it's God ultimately who makes it grow and who stays faithful to that seed planted and chases after that person.
Yes. This whole fire thing, so that, like, I mean, many homes got destroyed in the fires. And I mean, this happened. My friend was just messaging me. She's like, this just happened not that long ago in Canada. I had to, like, leave my house. And, like, so, I mean, this happens sometimes, but this one just seems so devastating. They all are, obviously. And one home fire is devastating. And we had the hurricane this year and all those homes lost, like, so much devastation. But some of these homes in LA are quite pricey. Like, I'm sure multi-million dollar homes in that area. I mean, the fires were starting to go up Hollywood Hills, right? And that made me think of my favorite Bible study, which was Ecclesiastes, when I studied Solomon. And they think Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes. I don't think it's, like, proven, but it's the signs lead to Solomon having written that. And Solomon, if you don't know, I don't know, have you studied Solomon much? Solomon was he was a king, and one of the last kings, and he led by his faith, and he prayed when he became king for probably one of the most important things you can pray for, which is wisdom. And after I learned that, like, I try to pray for that always, like, wisdom and discernment. Lord, give me wisdom and discernment. And so he prayed for wisdom, and because of that, because of his faith to not pray for stuff and praying for wisdom, God gave him wisdom, and he
he wrote the book of Proverbs. If that isn't wisdom, like,
Proverbs is all about wisdom, right? And so God gave him tons of wisdom, and because of that, he prospered. He did amazing. Like, he was an amazing king. And then he kept growing and growing in wealth, and eventually all of the possessions and things, despite his wisdom, and the people around him, he started putting wives. I think he had like 700 wives. Can you imagine? How is that possible? Okay, anyway, Charlie just turned and looked at us like, what?
If you visited one every day for a year, that would only be half.
What in the world? I think it said 700 wives. I could be totally making that up.
Just say
fact check me.
4 wives, and you're like 700.
Sometimes I exaggerate things. Maybe it was only 400. I don't know. Anyway, he had a bunch of wives, and I don't think all these wives were godly wives. And I think he started worshiping other gods and focusing on his riches. And towards the end of his life, he kind of realized that and wrote Ecclesiastes. And when I first started studying Ecclesiastes, I'm like, this is depressing. I didn't really know who wrote it, and I was studying it. I'm like, this is so depressing. I'll read you just some tidbits of it. I increased my achievements. I built houses, like we're talking about houses, right? And planted vineyards for myself. This is Ecclesiastes 2, verse 4. I constructed reservoirs for myself from which to irrigate a grove of flourishing trees. So he just is talking about all the things he gained. Verse 8, I also amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. And it goes on and on for things that he earned and got for himself that he desired. When I considered all that I had accomplished and what I had labored to achieve, I found everything to be futile and a pursuit of the wind. It's so temporary and futile, all these earthly possessions, that the wind could just blow it away in an instant. And we saw that happen in California, right? There was nothing to be gained under the sun. Basically saying there's nothing that he gained in his world of wealth. He was one of the richest, wealthiest kings ever. He said it was all meaningless and nothing. And if you go on to read Ecclesiastes, like that's what he says. And by the end of it, he does kind of bring it around to recognizing that the only thing that matters is God. And I think that he says, when all has been heard, the conclusion of the matter is this: fear God and keep his commands, because this is for all humanity. Like, all that matters is God and the wisdom God gives you, and all the things he did in this amazing, fancy, rich life, he said was futile. And he was just, when he focused on that, he was just depressed and realized how temporary everything was.
Yeah, and look at, like, all the rich people of today. Like, a lot of them are, like, depressed or they're having mental issues, and none of their riches, none of the stuff they have is helping that. Nothing is like healing any hole in their heart. Maybe it feels like it for a second, but it all could go away in an instant without us even expecting it, because like nobody in California expected that to happen, but just like a vapor, it just disappeared.
Yeah, like Solomon says, like the wind, it's gone with the wind. I loved, though, when I heard on the news, when I saw them interview a few people, how many people said, I lost everything, but I'm so thankful my loved ones are okay. Like, instead of, I'm sure, I mean, of course they're devastated. You're allowed to be devastated when you lose things, but they realized what was really important, and that was the lives of their family and their friends. And they realized, almost all of them, when they interviewed them, they're like, I'm so grateful that they're okay. That's all that really matters.
Mm-hmm.
A good question to think about or ponder would be, when horrible things happen like this, like how do you handle it mentally? Like, not just fires, like when you hear of a young person dying or someone getting robbed, or like there's evil things that happen in the world, and there's awful things that happen in the world. And how do you, like, do you have a way that you cope with that and put that into perspective?
Yeah, well, one thing I think about when I'm going through stuff, or I see other people going through stuff, even people that I don't know, is I think about David in Psalms. Like, he'll be praising God and being like, oh, you're so good, like, I love my life, everything's great. And then the next psalm, he'll be like, everything's ending in the world is terrible, and I'm going into battle, God help me, why are you forsaking me? So even like everybody in the Bible has gone through such hard things, but they experienced God, and they knew that through the hard things and after the hard things, God was still faithful, and that He's the one thing who got them out of it.
I often, because I've studied the Bible and studied history with my kids, I've seen how one person's life and the things, the mishaps, the devastation that happens in that person's life led to the next event, which led to the next event, which led to the next event, which led to Jesus's birth. Like, so like that one person was going through so much horrible stuff, but stayed faithful and praised God through it. And because of that, the next event was able to happen. And through that, like way down the line, which this person could have had no idea was going to happen, through him, Jesus was born out of his descendants. Like, and so that reminded me, like when I taught that history lesson, like that reminded me to, when I see horrible things that like don't make any sense and just seem to have no ounce of good in them, it reminds me to zoom out from God's perspective. And obviously, as humans, we're never going to be able to actually zoom out from God's perspectives. But if we try to zoom out and see our lives and the world through eternity, we realize how tiny of a blip our lives are compared to God's plan, but how some of these little blips, even if they're devastation that we're having to get through, might be a part of the bigger plan that leads to something more amazing.
Mm-hmm. Like a ripple effect. If you like do something for one person, or something happens to one person, and then they share it to somebody else, and then it just starts to ripple, and it affects like a lot more than we would expect or think. And also, like you said, like God's timing and God's plan, we could never understand it, and He uses our sufferings for good. That's a Bible verse that I cannot quote,
Yes.
but it says that He uses the bad things and the sufferings of this world, and He turns it for good.
That's kind of what I was referencing, was the story of Joseph, when his own brothers, tried to murder him.
And then sold him.
Instead of murdering him, they threw him in a hole, pretended he was murdered, and then
Murdering is too evil. We'll just sell him anyway.
they just sold him to slavery instead and told his dad he was murdered, right? They sold him, your own family tried to murder you and instead sold you into slavery. And then, so he was in slavery, and then he even got like imprisoned, didn't he? He got falsely accused of something, got put in prison. Like his poor life was horrible. Could you even imagine? And he stayed faithful. Like he stayed faithful and worshiped God and praised God, and God used him to lift him up and to follow, to have his plan continued, to have God's big plan continued, and out of that came Jesus in the future. Like it's just crazy to see how that timeline lined up and how his life was so horrible but led to something so beautiful because he trusted and stayed faithful to God.
Yeah, he stood firm in his faith.
Yeah.
This is Matthew 6, starting at verse 19. Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
I love that. That is something to live by, and something I feel like we have to put in front of our face every single day because it's so easy to forget.
Yeah. I'm constantly going to having to pray, like, God, please help me not be materialistic right now. Like, help me to see.
And we're human. I mean, we can't be hard on ourselves when we find our minds becoming more worldly and materialistic. We just have to give ourselves grace, ask for forgiveness, and pull ourselves back on track. Like, it's just a constant journey we're going to have to do because we are human.
This is James 4, verse 14. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like a vapor that appears for a little while, then vanishes. It just shows us that, like, we are, like, even our lives are simply a vapor. And then, like, we don't know when we're going to die. And even if we have another 100 years on our lives, it's still never going to be enough to satisfy ourselves or do everything that we want to do or get everything we want to get. And we never know what's going to happen. And basically, like, God will tell us to do something and we'll be like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. Or I'll go pray for a person at the store tomorrow, God. But that's boasting. That's taking pride, thinking that you know you're going to make it till tomorrow.
That's true, right?
Like, I mean, you never know.
That's another thing to think about. Like, I mean, Solomon was saying our possessions, everything we own, all these treasures are like the wind. That's saying our lives are like a vapor. Like, and not only our lives, but people in our lives. I think sometimes it helps, not because it's kind of not, I don't know. It helps me sometimes to realize I could lose anybody in my life tomorrow. And that's kind of sad I don't know. It's kind of gruesome and sad at the same time, but it's just that reminder, like, love that person today. Like, say what you wanted to say today. Don't wait until tomorrow. Don't wait until next week. Like, you don't know that you have tomorrow next week to love on somebody and to tell them about Jesus and to just take some time to send them a text and ask them how they're doing. Like, you don't know that you have tomorrow. And so we have to remember to treat people's lives like vapor because they can be too.
Yep. This is my last verse, 2 Corinthians 4, verse 18. So we do not focus on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal.
Oh, I love that. Man, all of those would be good quotes to, like, write down to have in front of our face every single day.
Yeah.
I feel like
I
we
should
should
put
do that.
that in my wallet every time I go to buy something.
Yes.
Oh.
We should make
Never
an
mind.
app. An app people put on their phones that every time they go to purchase something, that pops up to remind them. I think people would buy that.
Do not store yourself up. Oh. Never mind. You can put that back.
Pops up every time you open Amazon, just to remind you. All right. Anyway, we just want to thank you for listening. And people in California, we are praying for you. We are sorry for all the devastation, but you will be in our prayers. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.